So I'll kind of let you guys ask questions. Obviously, we're just in the midst of practice here, practice number 16 here today. So a little bit of a unique week for us with some of the day offs that we have, mandatory day offs that we have to have, a little bit of a disjointed week. We obviously are going to scrimmage at the end of the weekend. That scrimmage that is supposed to be secret, that somehow is not so secret, is coming up. We decided to move our scrimmage a little bit earlier this year. And part of the reason was to get earlier feedback potentially, so that we can have more time to make some corrections. I think as a team, we're doing all right. We're still not completely healthy. I would say this group is not quite as far along as last year's group was in certain areas, and I think that can probably be attributed to a variety of reasons. Overall youth, more guys learning new stuff, but the one thing I am excited about I'm excited about a lot of things, but I think that I really believe that we'll go as our leadership takes us this year. And when you talk about CJ Walker and Andre and Caleb and Kyle and some of our older guys, I think we'll go as they take us. And I'm excited to see them continuing to grow in those important roles. So I'll open up for questions here, and we'll move further here.
As a starting point, can you give us an injury update? How's some of the guys
progressing? So Musa overall he's progressing, but I think time will really tell. He's involved in non-contact activities right now, and I think it's really an unknown right now as to what his availability will be at the start of the season. I couldn't tell you. And that's a position, the wing position is something that we're, kind of after Andre, we're trying to figure out a little bit, to be quite honest with you. But we're not going to rush him back. It's not in his best interest. I think it's kind of a day-to-day thing with Musa. He's not involved in contact. He's not been able to be a part of full practices right now. When that'll happen remains to be seen. Justin is involved in full contact and full practices. However, I think he'd be the first one to tell you that he is not what he was last year, certainly not what he was in the spring. He had a terrific spring. What percentage he would be, I don't know, but he's clearly not physically at full strength. EJ is progressing well and getting in better shape. He's been involved in full practices here for a little under a week, I believe.
You talked at media day about guys needing to grow up in a hurry with the youth. You just mentioned this team's going to go as far as your leadership can take you. How do you, in this part of the preseason, how do you try to bring along some of that youth and try to figure out some of those things that are holding you back maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's everything that it's everything that you would expect. It's film. I'm reading the book now. Practice Perfect. That's good, really good. It was recommended to me by one of my former staff guys at Butler. And it just talks about, deliberate practice. So long story short, I don't want to get in the weeds, but it's really, as much as possible, we're going to try to go regular film sessions, some trial and error. We're trying to keep things as simple as possible for our young guys. They got to learn how to do things the way we expect them to do. Eventually the game will slow down for them, but it's coming at them pretty fast right now. And it will come at them really fast on Sunday as well. I think patience is going to be required on all of our parts, my part, our staff's part, their part as players, probably our fans' part, because I think There are going to be plenty of times where we'll play. At least 2 or 3 of our guys out on the floor will be freshmen and sophomores multiple times, I'm sure.
Talk about how your team will go as far as your leadership takes it. I think sort of a lot of people on the outside would maybe think that it would go as far as some of your freshmen might be able to take it just based on their readiness. Is part of you saying that because you don't necessarily, you have a young team and you're worried about, you don't want your team in the hands of the freshmen right away?
No, I think part of my reason I'm saying that is because that is the expectation for older guys in a program, is that they'll lead it the way we expect them to lead it. And that is the role that these guys need to continue to move into. And, I think your team is generally as strong as your leadership. And that doesn't always happen with upperclassmen. There's no question that our freshmen are going to, and sophomores for that matter, are going to play an important role on our team. I'm not minimizing that. I just think throughout the life of the season, what will go as our older guys lead, how they lead, and kind of where they take us. I think it's too much to expect that for guys that are just trying to find their own way a little bit.
You talked about Alonzo trying to find consistency and that being a big key. Now that you've seen him in off-season workouts and now 15 practices, how consistent do you think he has been at Ohio State?
I would say he's been really consistent in rebounding the ball. He's done a terrific job rebounding the ball, but he's still got a lot of growth in that area. But he's had a great attitude, great approach. I think him still trying to figure out. Alonzo's never been a guy that has scored at a really high level at whatever level he's been at. So I think offensively that you're going to see some rough moments that are going to take some time. But he's done a terrific job rebounding the ball. He's picked up some things really well. But there's a lot of growth still got to happen there.
You talked about the pace that CJ and DJ can both play with, and it does look like with those two guys and some of the pieces you got it, you could maybe be a team that gets down the floor a little more. I know your teams have never really gotten a ton of its offense out of transition, though you have been good at transition.
Yeah.
Do you think this could be a team that might look to try to get a little more of its offense that way?
I hope. I hope because we were tragic too much in transition last year. So I hope that we're better in that particular area, better at finishing, better at our decision making, and I think that's just an area we're consistently working on. Whether that changes our overall pace dramatically, I'm not sure. We really want to be efficient. We do like to attack early in the clock, and hopefully we can be a more efficient team than we were last year, whether that leads to free throw attempts or early scores. So I'm optimistic, but I don't think we're all the way there yet.
I remember when you first got here, you were talking about sort of bust out guys who can push the ball down the floor when they get a rebound. Who besides DJ and CJ right now would you be comfortable doing that?
We've allowed, without giving away state secrets here, Bill, we've allowed basically our kind of guard / combo point guard, so that includes Dwayne and Luther, to make those decisions. I think Andre will on occasion. I trust him to make those decisions. He's earned that, but the way we play, it's primarily those guys, unless it's just an out on the floor 2-on-1 break. We saw Caleb lead the break sometimes last year with those kind of freelance opportunities, but primarily those 4 guys.
You mentioned one thing you said about Alonzo was his attitude has been good.
Yeah.
How important is that in the preseason here? And really that goes like, that's a year-round thing, I get it. I think a lot of people would say that's one of your biggest attributes since you took over the program, is that culture, players buying in, having the right attitude, thing like that.
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, it is so important. And I think your older guys, again, set the tone on that with how coachable they are and what their approach is every day and how they're coming into work and what they say in the locker room when you're not there, when you ripped one of them and, you know, kicked him out of practice or whatever, like that, those are the moments that really define a team and the leadership of a team, is in their collective attitude and approach. And CJ Walker is gonna be one heck of a coach one day. I really believe that, because his attitude, he brings that approach. And I think that is the challenge for everybody who is young, who is kind of learning that this is harder than maybe what they anticipated it being. I think our freshmen have taken real strides overall, and just their approach and their attitude. Not that it was bad, but just, you know, you get down on yourself sometimes when you're like going against better players and than you've went against, and I think that's improved. You know, one of the things you talk about in practice is, right, we talk about all the things we're trying to improve on. You know, closeouts and blockouts and shot selection. But really, as a coach in practice, you are trying to practice your response to difficult moments in a game. How do you respond to adversity? How do you respond to a coach correcting you? You're trying to practice your response as much as we're trying to practice definable, specific physical skills, if that makes sense. And I think for us, that's a process that you don't master just through 16 practices.
Well, the other thing is when you brought in a recruiting class like you just did, and you got some freshmen that would expect to play,
Yeah.
probably do too, and you've got veterans that are leaders.
Yeah.
I guess how quickly, like, can you gauge if it's gonna be a problem at all, or as a coach, like, that everyone's gonna be happy in their roles and keep pointing towards team goals?
I think that we won't know that for a while. I think we won't know that for a while. And listen, I do believe that you know, I think our freshmen, I believe our freshmen are all going to play an important role in certain ways. But that whole, you know, we do have more guys this year, just generally on our roster. So, right, that's more guys that expect to play. So, how collectively we handle the divvying up of playing time and role definition and all that kind of stuff, I think remains to be seen. Is it something that as a coaching staff we're very aware of? For sure. There are going to have to be, you know, this example is one that just came across my desk because I thought of it. Jayshawn Tate, junior year, was not all league, but had a pretty good season, averaged over 14 points per game, took 333 shots, I believe, pretty efficient overall. Had negative assist turnover ratio, 20 more turnovers than assists his junior year. Okay, team obviously, we know the team was just okay. Senior year comes in, really good player comes along side here. He allows Kada to flourish in a different role. That takes maturity, that takes growth. Look at his numbers. He averaged 2 less points a game, took 30 less total shots, but 30 more assists and turnovers, more efficient from the field overall, more efficient from three, not much better from the free throw line, but so you saw more efficiency. What was the end result? Everybody said he's a better player. It was a better team, but better. He was a better player. Why? His efficiency numbers improved, and for him, it took great maturity to say, you know what, Kada, I'm going to allow you to be Kada. I'm going to do my role at the highest level. And what that produced for him, even though it was less numbers, was, and I think at times probably that was hard for him, but what it produced is a better season, and he actually was all conference, right, where he wasn't the year before. It's a great lesson for young players.
Along those lines, when you're dealing with greater numbers and more depth and more guys that can legitimately play for you, do you have more meetings with guys throughout the preseason to let them know where they stand, or do those meetings happen more later? Because I would think that more communication maybe could help prevent like resentment or hurt feelings or things like that.
I think that's coming. I think that's coming, Adam. And we have had those kind of meetings, but I think more of those meetings are coming. I don't know right now, listen, all the minutes and how they would be divvied up. I really don't. I couldn't tell, like, I couldn't tell you right now I don't have a set, like, definite starting five in my head. I just don't at this point. So it's still, you know, pretty open-ended when it comes to that. But yeah, it will require a lot of one-on-one meetings, and the guys that embrace and star in their role will be the guys you'll see that'll get better and better.
Who's been your best three-point shooter at this point?
I think numbers-wise right now, through practices, Andre Wesson is leading us in three-point field goal efficiency. His numbers have been good, and his shot selection has been really good as well. He's, I think, right at 41%.
You mentioned getting EJ back to practice.
Mhm.
What have you seen from him that stood out? How do you think he'll help this team?
You know, he's got to continue to getting. You're not out 3 weeks, 3 important weeks, and not have, you know, his conditioning was always going to be something we had to work on, but that's been a little bit of an issue for him. Just really like his approach and attitude right now. I think he's done a good job kind of getting better and better and making steps forward, even though at times I'm sure it's been frustrating for him because it hasn't come as quickly. But he's done a really good job scoring the ball. He's got to rebound it better, but done a really good job scoring the ball for us. And I'm just excited about his continual growth. He's done some good things.
When you say that this group isn't as far along as maybe they were last year at this point, do you mean just like decision-making of some of the younger guys, or just their adjustment to the college game? Or just like...
Yeah, I think it's probably all of that. Like, just defensively, we're not quite there. Our ball handling and decision-making, it's not quite there, and it's something we obviously struggled with last year. I'm not saying we can't, is it the byproduct of having 7 freshmen and sophomores? I don't know. Maybe it's something I'm not doing well, but that's just an honest assessment of kind of where we're at. And I think we've got to continue to make strides.
As a guy who's been known to be harder on his point guards, I guess, how are you tempering your own emotions as, you know, DJ's going through this transition of learning how to play at this level?
Yeah, DJ's done a good job in a lot of areas. And I think he's learning right now what you can and can't do at this level. And as a coach, just right, as a parent, we want all of our kids, we want to protect them from as much failure as possible. That's all our tendencies, right? Well, the reality is let them fail and learn from it. So that's part of what these first 15, 16 practices are. Let's let him fail some and figure some things out. But he's made real good strides, and DJ has made real solid strides. I've been proud of him with that on the floor. But we got a ways to go.
What have you seen out of Caleb with the weight loss and how his game has changed from last year to this year as far as practices?
More movement by Caleb, just ability to kind of play harder, longer. I really loved how he's moved. I love Caleb's approach right now as much as anything. And you know, sports can be cruel, right? You can have a great approach and lose all this weight. Doesn't necessarily mean you're right away you're gonna see the dividends. But I love his approach. Caleb is putting himself in the best position to be at his best, and that's all you can ask for.
Chris, you guys were, I think you were 15th in defensive efficiency your first year, and then last year you were still top 30, even though you lost a lot of your versatility and length. Just like, how did you, I know it's not exactly equal, but you seem to maintain for the most part. How did you guys do that last year? And does the makeup of this roster maybe remind you any more of 2 years ago when you did have some of that versatility on that end of the floor?
A little bit, although those 2 defenders with length and versatility with Kata and JT were, and then CJ Jackson was a pretty good defender for that group. But those 2 were because they played so much and they were so valuable, so that length was on the floor so much. And that little loquacious dude from Indiana, Dockage, proved to be a better defender than we anticipated. So it rounded into a pretty good defensive team. I don't know yet. The thing you're hesitant as coaches right now is defense is so much about will and effort and a collective mindset. And that team last year, for the most part, it had that. Now, our defensive numbers in the Big Ten weren't great, but as you mentioned, on the year, we were 25th. Part of that's, I'm waiting to see what this group has that too, because the moment as a coach you assume that's gonna be the same is when you have a dip in your defensive efficiency, and you look at it, and you're like midway through the year, and like, oh, we're 75th in the country in defensive efficiency. So I'm hesitant to assume that it's gonna be the case this year.
Does Caleb's physical changes, obviously they'll help you on that end. Is it possible that, I don't know, you could switch him more if teams try to put him in screens? It doesn't seem like we would be able to do that in the past. I don't know if he's made such a drastic change that you could do it now.
I've always been pretty, Caleb's smart, but I've always been pretty pleased with his ability to move his feet laterally. Now, you know, vertically, is he no, he's not a jumping jack vertically, but laterally, he's pretty good. So I do think there will be times we'll switch, and the decrease in weight should help that. A big part of that too is he's a smart defender. Listen, I say that with the exception of fouls, which we got to get him better with, but usually he's smart when he switches on the guys.
Okay, two more.
You mentioned leadership early on. At what point in preseason do you really need to start to see that from guys as they kind of emerge as leaders?
Right away. I think right away. And our schedule's well documented, but right away, in practice, right now, every day. And we've seen some really good moments, but we've got to continue to see that grow, but right away.
Where would you say you're at in terms of installing your offensive and defensive systems? Because the guys who were just here said you're a coach who likes to add complexity to that even as the season gets started.
Yeah, it's interesting they say that. That's an interesting observation from them, and probably an accurate one. We've tried to be really basic now because of how young we are. When I look back at last year's practice plans at this time, we did have more stuff in at this time last year. So, you know, it's a conscious decision. I've been a little bit more simpler at this point right now because of our youth.
Okay, thanks, Coach.